All right, here we are for another day of some folk tales, and a couple more Native American folk tales that we're going to talk about. You should have just finished the folk tale Stripes, the Native American folk tale. It's really the how the chipmunk got his stripes.
It's one of those pourquoi stories that explains why something happened the way it did in nature.
Okay, let's see, Miss Smiley. I think, hold on, I'm on the wrong video, or on the wrong PowerPoint. That makes a difference. Here we go. So we're going to sort these words, and it seemed like this was a little challenging, at least for our friends in person yesterday. So let's really think about details that would be important if I'm retelling the story. If I'm going to tell somebody about this video I just watched, and they said, well, what was it about? And I'm going to tell it to them. What were some things I might say in my retelling instead of just something that's not important? So, as the sun raised over Bear, Chipmunk laughed. I'm probably not going to talk about that if I'm telling the story. It's not important. Bear lay down facing east, making himself comfortable.
I don't really think that's super important to the story.
No. The reason he laid east was he was watching for the sun, but that's something I can just let go. It's a detail that's not important. Bear bragged that he was the strongest animal.
That's going to be important, Miss Mullen, because that's really the problem. That's what
that's
caused the trouble.
So Chipmunk challenged Bear to stop the sun from rising. That's part of the important events that leads to
that problem. Going to try to stop him from bragging. I'm going to trick him. I'm going to challenge him to something he can't do.
Bear looked at Chipmunk with determined eyes.
It shows how he feels, that he thinks he can do it, but I don't think the way his eyes looked is really important. I don't think we have to have that.
Let's put that over here. Bear was angry with Chipmunk, so he chased her. This one had kind of a roller coaster little ending. It didn't just end with Bear realizing he wasn't the strongest. He couldn't stop the fact that Bear was angry and he chased her does lead to him clawing her, leaving her with the stripes, which is the title of the story, Stripes. So I think this one is important because he had
to chase her before he could catch her.
Right. Chipmunk scurried back to her burrow. No, that's
don't
really
have to have that one.
Don't really need it. Bear's claws scratched Chipmunk, left scars that became her stripes.
That's our pourquoi story. What happened? Chipmunk got her stripes.
Birds began to sing.
Don't need the birds singing.
No.
It's not essential.
Chipmunk is annoyed with Bear's bragging, decides to play a trick on him. Well, again, it's Bear's bragging. He got annoyed, so he's going to trick him, and the trick was challenging Bear to
stop the sun from rising.
Chipmunk knew he couldn't. He couldn't do that.
But Bear wasn't smart enough to. So he was foolish.
So, if we've got our details, we can use some of these details that were important to the summary to help us with our retelling. We won't use everything that's in here exactly, and we got to add some more, but it certainly will help us in the retelling. So, in a little while, when you read a story called Strong Wind and the Youngest Daughter, after you've sorted your details, you're going to answer some questions, and then you're going to retell the story. And in your retelling, you're probably going to include some of those details you sorted that were important. So, I'm going to retell it. Got to think.
Long ago, because it's a folk tale, Bear liked to brag about being the strongest animal.
Old Chipmunk was tired of it. So she decided to play a trick. And really, the trick sort of works, but it comes back to get her in the end, but plays a trick on Bear.
Chipmunk challenges Bear to stop the sun from rising because Bear says he's the strongest. So she was smart enough to know it doesn't matter how strong you are, you can't do that.
Absolutely.
Apparently Bear wasn't that smart.
Yeah. So when Bear couldn't do that, because he couldn't stop the sun, couldn't do that, Chipmunk laughed.
Bear got mad. He chased Chipmunk through the forest. And when he caught her, he scratched her.
I'm just going to put scratched her. We'll just save a few words. Scratched her. The scars became
Chipmunks, stripes.
and it's the chipmunks plural possessive because all chipmunks now have those stripes.
The lesson.
Now think about the lesson. Let's think. A couple of things. I mean, Bear hopefully should have learned to quit bragging. You know, it kind of goes back to that bragging like the porcupine.
Chipmunk might not should have laughed at Bear, so maybe not make fun of Bear, even though kind of Bear got what
I'm going to
he
put,
deserved.
and you don't have to do this when you're doing yours, guys, at all, okay? But I'm just going to, we're going to list a couple of lessons. You all right, Miss Taylor?
Oh, I have the yawns. I've yawned 2 or 3 times.
The problem when we sit still, we get tired. One lesson could be, don't be a bragger. Nobody likes a bragger. And maybe if Bear hadn't been bragging, Chipmunk hadn't have challenged him and caused all that.
None of that would have happened.
Another.
Chipmunk should have. Don't make fun of others. Don't delight in others' failures.
Right.
Sometimes when somebody fails, we think it's funny, and really, it's not.
Perhaps the treating others the way you want to be treated.
Both of them. Bear not been bragging. Chipmunk wouldn't have had a problem. Chipmunk wouldn't have been laughing. Bear wouldn't have chased him and scratched him.
So let's think, what category, theme would these lessons go with? Don't be a bragger, make fun of others, delight in others' failures, treat others the way.
I see a couple.
I do. I could sort, and I may even just, guys, you do not have to do this on your summary. We're just doing a little teaching. Don't be a bragger. I think that goes with, it could go with wisdom or it could go with kindness, really. I mean, but the wisdom, perhaps.
Don't make fun of others. That is a smart choice, but I think more than anything, it's kindness.
Being kind. Don't make fun of others. Well, don't delight in others' failures. Again, I think that would go with the kindness.
I agree. And treat others the way you want to be treated is also going to be kindness.
So, when we ask you for a theme, we're just asking for one word that would sort of sum up your lesson kind of in that one word. Kind. Yes. Didn't see that. All right. So, another thing, let's see, Miss Taylor, think about somebody else. Let's just figure out a situation where somebody else might need to learn one of these lessons.
Okay.
Oh, I know. Perhaps a little girl who wanted to learn to jump rope. And she tried, and every time she did, she would trip and she'd fall, and the other kids would laugh at her.
That could be don't make fun of others.
And don't maybe delight in others' failures.
Right, absolutely. I thought you were going somewhere else.
Okay, okay.
I had one. There was a basketball player, and he bragged all the time. I used the word. All the time he said, I am so much better than you. I'm so much better than you. I'm so much better than you. And then at the big game, he didn't do very well. Didn't score any points, whatever. And the rest of the team kind of was like, hey, thought you were supposed to be all that. And, he wasn't. So that one, obviously, since I told you guys, don't be a bragger.
Don't be a bragger. Okay. So when we ask that question of a real life or a modern example of someone else that could learn, think about the lesson and then think about how someone else could learn it.
And so if it's a multiple choice question, it would simply be thinking about who else kind of had the same problem as that person. And
how it gets solved. Real quick, and we'll talk, let's see, today's story is going to be called A Strong Wind and the Youngest Daughter. I'll just go on and tell you, it is really a Native American Cinderella tale. Now, it is not going to look or sound anything like
no fairy godmother,
no pumpkin that turns into the carriage,
no glass slipper.
Yeah, no prince per se. But you have this great man named Strong Wind. And
you have some sisters.
You have some sisters
who would like to be his bride, just like the prince was kind of looking
a
for.
chief had 3 daughters. So these daughters, and there's 3. Got 3 in the fairy tale here again. They want to become the wife. So it's very similar to Cinderella. Just kind of keep that in your head as you're reading
just
this
compare
story.
it in your head. How is this like the regular Cinderella that we know? How is it different?
We're not going to ask you to do anything related to Cinderella. I just want to point out that this is, how we talked about folktales in all cultures can be similar in some ways. And so this Strong Wind Native American folktale is very much like a Cinderella story. So get started reading that story and sorting your details and answering your questions. And we will talk to you later.